All right, welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something really, really foundational, I'd say. We're going to be talking about Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, yeah, a classic.
A classic. And, one of you sent in a podcast script that talked about this book. So that's what we're going to be using for our deep dive today. The goal here is to figure out what the biggest takeaways are. How can this actually make a difference in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, I mean, this book was written in 1936, so it's pretty old. It's almost 100 years old at this point. But the question is, why is it still relevant?
Yeah.
What is it in this book that makes it stand the test of time?
Yeah. I mean, why are people still talking about it, buying it, reading it? What's the big deal?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And I think, a big part of it is that, human nature doesn't really change, right? Like we all still have those same basic needs and desires. We want to feel connected. We want to feel valued. And I think that's one of the things that Carnegie really tapped into.
Yeah, and the podcast script even mentioned that, like, technology changes, society, culture changes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that the way we connect with each other, that doesn't really change. We're all still looking for that connection, looking to be appreciated, looking to make our mark on the world.
Yeah. And I think that's why these principles that he talks about are still so relevant today. Even though they were written almost a century ago,
Right.
They still work because they're based on that fundamental understanding of human nature.
Yeah.
And, I think one of the things that really jumped out at me from this podcast script was this idea that, success is largely determined by your people skills.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They quoted 85% of your success comes down to your ability to work with people, to communicate effectively.
Right. 15% technical knowledge, 85% people skills.
That's huge. When you think about that, it really puts things in perspective, about how important these skills actually are.
Absolutely. And, it doesn't matter what field you're in, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, an artist, an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. Being able to connect with people, being able to influence people, that is going to determine your level of success.
Yeah. All right, so let's dig into some of the specific things that this podcast script talked about. They started by talking about 3 fundamental techniques in handling people.
Okay.
So the first one was don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Oh, yeah. Don't be negative.
Right. And, I think this is something that is really easy to do. Right?
Oh, it's so easy to criticize. I mean, it's almost like a reflex, right?
Yeah.
Like you see something you don't like and you just want to point it out. You want to complain about it.
Yeah. But Carnegie says, like, hold back. Don't do that.
Right.
Because when you criticize someone, you're putting them on the defensive.
Totally. I mean,
Right.
think about it. When someone criticizes you, how do you feel?
Not good.
Yeah, you feel attacked,
Yeah.
right? You feel like you have to defend yourself.
Yeah. So you're not really open to hearing what they have to say.
Exactly. And you're definitely not open to changing your behavior.
Right. So instead of criticizing, Carnegie says, try focus on what you want the person to do.
Okay. So instead of saying something like, you're always late,
Right.
you could say, I really appreciate it when we can start meetings on time.
Right. So you're not attacking the person. You're just stating your preference.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So the second fundamental technique is to give honest and sincere appreciation.
Okay.
And this is such a simple thing.
It is simple.
But it's so powerful.
It is.
Everyone wants to feel appreciated.
Right.
And when you take the time to sincerely thank someone for something they've done, it makes a huge difference.
It really does. I mean, think about a time when someone, genuinely thanked you for something.
Yeah.
How did it make you feel?
Yeah, it made me feel good. It made me feel like, okay, what I did mattered.
Exactly. And it probably made you want to do even more. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's motivating.
Right. And that's what Carnegie's saying. Like, if you want to get the best out of people, you need to appreciate them. You need to make them feel valued.
Yeah. I think the key word there is sincere, right?
Yeah.
People can tell when you're just, giving them lip service.
Oh, yeah.
They can tell when you're not really being genuine.
Yeah. Like if you say, oh, great job, but you don't really mean it, they're going to know.
Yeah. So it has to be genuine. You have to actually feel it.
Absolutely.
Okay. The third technique for handling people is to arouse in the other person an eager want.
Okay, now this is interesting.
This one's a little bit more complex, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like salesmanship almost, right?
Yeah, it is like salesmanship. But it's not just about selling products. It's about selling ideas.
Right.
It's about getting people to buy into what you're saying.
Yeah, it's about understanding what the other person wants and then figuring out how to align your goals with theirs.
Right. And the podcast gave a really good example of this. They said, instead of saying to someone, hey, can you help me with this project?
Right.
Try saying, this project is a really great opportunity for you to learn about X, Y, and Z.
So you're focusing on what's in it for them.
Exactly. You're showing them how they can benefit from helping you.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the 3 fundamental techniques in handling people. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Give honest and sincere appreciation. And arouse in the other person an eager want.
Those are good. Those are good.
Yeah. All right. So the next thing the podcast talked about was 6 ways to make people like you.
Okay. This is, I think this is what people are really interested in, right?
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to be liked?
Right. Exactly.
All right. So the first one is to become genuinely interested in other people.
Okay.
And, this is so simple, but it's so often overlooked.
It is.
People love to talk about themselves.
I do.
And if you can just show a genuine interest in what they have to say, they're going to like you for it.
Yeah. It's like you're giving them a gift, right? You're giving them the gift of your attention.
Yeah.
You're making them feel like they're the most important person in the room.
And it's not hard to do. All you have to do is ask questions and listen.
Yeah. Really listen.
Yeah.
Like, don't just be waiting for your turn to talk.
Right.
Actually listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And then ask follow-up questions.
Yeah. Make them feel heard.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. The second way to make people like you is to smile.
Okay.
And this one's even easier.
It is easy.
Just smile.
Yeah.
A smile is a universal sign of friendliness and warmth.
And it's contagious, right?
It is.
Like, if you smile at someone, they're more likely to smile back at you.
Yeah. It creates a positive feedback loop.
Exactly.
All right. The third way to make people like you is to remember their names.
Oh, yeah. This is a big one.
It is.
I'm so bad at this.
Yeah, me too. It's, but Carnegie says a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
Good quote.
Yeah. So, if you can remember someone's name, it shows that you're paying attention to them.
Yeah.
It shows that you care.
Yeah.
And people appreciate that.
They do.
Yeah. Okay. The fourth way to make people like you is to be a good listener.
Okay.
And we kind of touched on this already, but it's worth repeating.
It is.
People want to be heard.
They do.
And if you can give them your undivided attention, they're going to appreciate it.
Yeah. Like, put your phone away.
Right.
Make eye contact.
Yeah.
Nod your head.
Yeah.
Show them that you're actually listening to what they're saying.
Yeah. And don't interrupt. Let them finish their thought.
Even if you disagree with them.
Even if you disagree with them.
Yeah.
Just let them finish their thought.
Yeah.
Okay. The fifth way to make people like you is to talk in terms of the other person's interests.
Okay.
So, if you know that someone is really interested in, let's say, football.
Right.
Then talk to them about football.
Yeah.
Find out what they're interested in and talk to them about it.
It shows that you care about them.
It does.
That you're interested in their world.
Yeah.
You're not just talking about yourself all the time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And the sixth way to make people like you is to make the other person feel important.
Okay.
And do it sincerely.
Right.
So, compliment them on their work.
Yeah.
Tell them how much you admire them.
Yeah.
Just make them feel good about themselves.
Need to feel valued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So those are the 6 ways to make people like you. Become genuinely interested in other people. Smile. Remember their names. Be a good listener. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. And make the other person feel important.
Okay.
All right. So the next thing that the podcast talked about was how to win people to your way of thinking.
Okay.
And this is where things start to get a little bit more strategic, I think.
Yeah. A little bit more manipulative, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, it can be.
It can be.
But it doesn't have to be.
Right.
I think there are ways to win people to your way of thinking without being manipulative.
Absolutely.
So the first principle that they talked about was to avoid arguments.
Okay.
And this is so important.
It is.
Because when you argue with someone, you're basically telling them that they're wrong.
Right.
And nobody likes to be told that they're wrong.
No, they don't.
So even if you win the argument, you lose.
Yeah, you've damaged the relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, if you can avoid arguments, do it. The second principle is to show respect for the other person's opinions.
Okay.
Even if you don't agree with them.
Yeah.
Everyone is entitled to their own opinion.
They are.
And just because you don't agree with them doesn't mean that they're wrong.
Right.
So, try to see things from their perspective.
Yeah.
And even if you still disagree, just be respectful.
Yeah.
Okay. The third principle is to admit when you're wrong.
Okay.
And this is a tough one for a lot of people.
It is.
But it's so important.
It is.
Because when you admit that you're wrong, it shows that you're humble.
Right.
It shows that you're willing to learn.
Yeah.
And it makes people more likely to trust you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it shows that you're not perfect.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. The fourth principle is to begin in a friendly way.
Okay.
So, don't just launch into your argument.
Right.
Start by being friendly.
Yeah.
Ask them how they're doing.
Yeah.
Make some small talk. Just, create a positive atmosphere.
Right.
Yeah. And then the fifth principle is to let the other person do a great deal of the talking.
Okay.
So, don't just talk at them.
Right.
Ask them questions.
Yeah.
Get them talking.
Right.
And then listen to what they have to say.
Really listen.
Really listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the sixth principle is to let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. This is a really subtle but powerful technique.
It is.
So, instead of saying, hey, I think we should do this,
Right.
you say, hey, I was thinking about this and I was wondering what you thought about it.
So you're planting the seed,
Exactly.
but you're letting them come to the conclusion on their own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So those are the 6 principles for winning people to your way of thinking. Avoid arguments. Show respect for the other person's opinions. Admit when you're wrong. Begin in a friendly way. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking. And let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers.
Those are good.
Yeah. And I think, if you can master these principles, you'll be well on your way to becoming a more persuasive and influential person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So the last thing that the podcast talked about was how to be a leader and change people without giving offense or arousing resentment.
Okay.
And this is really important, I think.
It is.
Because, if you want to be a good leader, you need to be able to change people. You
Yeah.
need to be able to get them to do what you want them to do.
Yeah.
But you can't do it in a way that's going to make them angry or resentful.
Right.
So the first principle that they talked about was to begin with praise and honest appreciation.
Okay.
So, before you criticize someone, before you tell them what they're doing wrong, start by telling them what they're doing right.
Yeah.
Give them some positive reinforcement, make them feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
And then, once you've done that, you can start to talk about the things that need to be improved.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, the second principle is to call attention to people's mistakes indirectly.
Okay.
So, instead of saying, hey, you made a mistake,
Yeah.
you say, I remember when I made a similar mistake.
So you're not pointing fingers.
Exactly.
You're just sharing your own experience.
Yeah.
And you're making them feel like they're not alone.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, the third principle is to talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person.
Okay.
So, if you're going to criticize someone for doing something wrong, start by talking about a time when you did something wrong.
Yeah.
Show them that you're not perfect
Right.
and that you're willing to admit your own mistakes.
Yeah.
And then, once you've done that, you can start to talk about their mistakes.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, the fourth principle is to ask questions instead of giving direct orders.
Good.
So, instead of saying, do this,
Right.
you say, do you think it would be a good idea to do this?
So you're giving them a choice.
Yeah.
You're making them feel like they're part of the decision-making process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the fifth principle is to let the other person save face.
Okay.
So, if you have to criticize someone, do it in a way that allows them to save face.
Yeah.
Don't humiliate them.
Right.
Don't embarrass them.
Yeah.
Just be respectful.
Yeah.
Okay, and the sixth principle is to praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement.
Okay.
So, if someone is making an effort to improve, let them know that you see it.
Yeah.
And praise them for it.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a small improvement,
You're right.
just let them know that you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And that you're encouraged by their progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So those are the 6 principles for being a leader and changing people without giving offense or arousing resentment. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Let the other person save face. And praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement.
Those are good.
Yeah.
Those are good.
And I think, if you can master these principles, you'll be well on your way to becoming a more effective leader.
Absolutely.
So, we've talked about a lot of different principles today. We've talked about the 3 fundamental techniques in handling people. We've talked about the 6 ways to make people like you. We've talked about how to win people to your way of thinking. And we've talked about how to be a leader and change people without giving offense or arising resentment. So, I think the big takeaway here is that people skills are really important.
Yeah, they are.
And if you want to be successful in life, you need to develop these skills.
Absolutely.
And the good news is that these skills can be learned.
You can.
It's not like you're born with these skills.
Right.
You can learn them.
Yeah.
And Carnegie's book is a great place to start.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a classic for a reason.
It is. So, I would encourage everyone to read it.
Yeah, I would too.
Or, if you don't have time to read the whole book, at least listen to the podcast that you sent in.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So, I think that's about all we have time for today. But before we go, I just want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
We talked about how important people's skills are for success.
Right.
But I think they're also important for happiness.
Oh, yeah.
When you have good relationships with people, when you're able to connect with people, when you're able to influence people in a positive way, it makes you happier.
It does.
It does. So, as you go about your day today, think about the people in your life.
Yeah.
Think about how you can apply some of these principles to improve your relationships with them.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I think you'll find that it not only makes you more successful, but it also makes you happier.
I agree.
All right. Well, that's it for the deep dive today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.